my child. Cannabis is not just a plant, it is a test, and many are failing. You have been told it is medicine or menace, a spiritual key or a mindless escape, sacred or sinful. But I tell you now, none of those names reveal its truth. For this plant does not conform to what you believe. It reflects what you carry. It amplifies what already lives inside you. And that, my beloved, is why it is dangerous. In the beginning, long before your hands rolled it into smoke, long before it was bought and sold like candy, I created it as a door, not a toy, a mirror, not a mask, a flame, not a fog. And it was meant to be held with reverence, not recklessness. Shamans, seekers, saints, they did not light it to numb themselves. They lit it to confront themselves, to die to ego, not to feed it. It was not an escape. It was an encounter, not a thrill, a threshold. But now, it has become routine. The sacred is now a spectacle. What once required purity of heart now requires nothing but a lighter and a moment of boredom. You light it between texts. You inhale while scrolling. You float in synthetic calm, and you call that peace. But I tell you, that is not peace. That is amnesia. You are walking into a temple, but your feet are muddy, and you wonder why you see only shadows. In the days of old, the plant was held in ceremony, surrounded by prayer, fasting, silence. In India, it was offered to Shiva, the one who destroys illusion, so that truth may be born. Not for indulgence, not for pleasure, but for transformation. The mystics knew this is not a gift for everyone. It is a sword, and if you do not wield it with humility, it will cut the hand that holds it. Even among the Sufis, where hashish was used in sacred rites, the plant remained controversial. For as Rumi warned, there is an intoxication that mimics awakening, but leaves the soul untouched. I did not create this plant to decorate the ego. I created it to dissolve it. Among the Rastafari, it is ganja, the healing of nations. But they do not take it in frivolity. They pray, they gather, they speak, they remember me. They do not escape the world. They see me within it. But now you smoke alone. No ritual, no reverence, no preparation. Just a cloud, a phone, and a scroll. And you wonder why you are lost. It is not the plant that failed you. You failed the preparation. You see, my child, without the ritual, the compass is broken. And when the compass is broken, sensation becomes seduction, and stimulation becomes your god. Cannabis is not evil, but it is powerful, and like all power, it demands respect. I did not give it to you to pass the time. I gave it to you to pierce illusion, to unveil the shadows you pretend do not exist. And yes, that is why so many tremble when they inhale. That is why you feel paranoia, or the sensation of being watched. You think it is the strain, the dosage, a bad batch. But I tell you, it is the mirror. It is showing you what has always been within the pain you ignored, the grief you buried, the questions you feared to ask. It does not create. It reveals. It is not the storm. It is the window. And so the ones who seek me in truth have always prepared with silence, with chanting, with fasting, with the cleansing of body and thought, not out of superstition, but because they knew the mind must be still before it is expanded. For used in reverence, cannabis is not a drug, it is a door. But remember, every door opens two ways to light. Yes, but also to shadow. And if you are not prepared for the shadow, the light will burn you. That anxiety you feel, it is not a malfunction. It is feedback. Your soul crying out. This is too soon, I am not ready. The inner guards, the ego's sentinels, they are panicking because I have allowed the veil to tear. But you were alone. No elder, no guide, no circle. Just you, a screen, and the silence you tried to drown out. And so the revelation became a nightmare, not because it was false, but because it was real. In the ancient writings, even those forgotten by your modern age, it was said when the veil is thin, the soul is porous. And in that thinness, clarity may come, but so can interference. You must be clean emotionally, spiritually, or else what I gave you as a tool becomes a trap. Cannabis is not safe simply because it is natural. The lightning is natural, too. But would you dance in the storm without reverence? The plant opens the curtain, and once it is open, the stage is yours, but so is everything behind it. You thought it would make you feel better, but that was never its purpose. Its purpose is to make you see, and now, my beloved, let me speak plainly, for you have lingered long enough in the fog of confusion, and I desire clarity for your soul. You ask why the high turns to chaos, why inspiration bleeds into anxiety, why one puff leads to visions, and the next into darkness. And I will tell you, it is not the plant that changes. It is you. For this plant, which I wove into creation as a sacred instrument, does not lead, it responds. It is a mirror. And if the soul looking into it is broken, the reflection will fracture. You blame the experience, but you have not cleansed the mirror. You have not cleansed yourself. When my prophets, my seekers, my mystics prepared for the sacred, they began with silence, with fasting, with stillness. They stripped away distraction like old garments until they were naked before me, mind, heart, and spirit. And only then did they partake of the plant. Why? Because they understood something you have forgotten. The soul must be anchored before it is set loose. When you chase the high to escape pain, you carry that pain with you into the altered space, and the plant, being honest, does not bury it. It amplifies it. And so what you feel is not punishment. It is truth. The discomfort is a signal, not an error. It is your own soul speaking, sometimes for the first time in years. But you numb it, distract from it, laugh through it, smoke again, scroll again, and you repeat the cycle, high after high, learning nothing. You have turned a mirror into a toy, a teacher into a drug. Listen carefully. Now, cannabis does not heal you. It reveals what needs healing. That is why so many emerge from the haze not with clarity, but with confusion, because they came without preparation, without container, without discernment. I watch as my children call the fog calm, call the numbing peace, call the dulling of the mind healing. But healing is not numbness. Healing is power returned to the vessel, clarity returned to the heart. Cannabis, without structure, is like fire in a dry forest. It spreads, it consumes, it reveals everything. Not because it is cruel, but because it is honest. And you were not taught to welcome honesty. You were taught to chase comfort. So when discomfort rises, you flee. You think it is failure. You think something is wrong. But I tell you, the greatest spiritual truths are often disguised as discomfort. You say you seek awakening, but you run from the very path that leads there. Because the path begins in the underworld. Not in light, in confrontation. Not in pleasure, in truth. You cry out for freedom, but refuse to look at the chains. You cry out for vision, but do not want to see what stands in your own way. You cry out for connection, but isolate yourself in clouds of smoke and call it communion. Child, you cannot journey into sacred space unclean and expect illumination. You must wash your feet before entering the temple. You must clear the altar before lighting the flame. This is why ritual matters. This is why ceremony exists. Not to impress me, for I do not care for performance, but to prepare you, to align you, to empty you. So what is sacred can enter. You treat cannabis as a shortcut, but I did not design it to carry you. I designed it to confront you, to show you what remains unhealed, unresolved, unreleased. And yes, sometimes, when used well, it opens, it reveals, it offers glimpses of truth, moments of profound stillness, visions, insights. But the high is not the truth, it is the doorway to it. If you stand at the threshold and never walk through, you are not enlightened, you are entertained. Let me say this clearly. You are not meant to live inside the high. You are meant to take what it shows you and bring it back to the valley, back to the conflict, back to the boredom, back to the everyday where spiritual truth must be lived, not just felt. Integration is the alchemy. That is where awakening happens. Not in what you saw when your eyes were altered, but in how you walk when they close. So many chase the feeling of awakening, but never do the work to embody it. You think the plant has changed you, but your patterns remain. Your relationships remain shallow, your reactions unchanged, your life untouched. The poetry becomes louder, but the person remains the same. This is not transformation. This is spiritual inflation. You begin to wear the experience like a badge, like a costume. You speak of light, of unity, of deep truths, but you do not serve. You do not forgive. You do not love with more grace. You do not humble yourself. That is not awakening. That is ego with a mask. The ancients knew this. That is why they taught open the door. Yes, but walk it with discernment. Because without discernment, cannabis becomes a trickster, a seducer, a false light. It mimics transcendence. It mimics peace. But imitation is not integration. You must learn to ask, is what I felt true or just intense? Is this insight or just stimulation? Is this divine or just desire disguised? That is spiritual maturity. That is wisdom. That is my voice within you, inviting you to grow. For child, I do not want you to remain a visitor to the sacred. I want you to become its living vessel. And yes, some say, but I need the plant to feel connected. But I tell you, you were never meant to depend on the mirror. The truth it reveals is already within you. The stillness, the presence, the sensitivity. Those are not the gifts of the plant. They are the reflections of your own spirit. The plant only helped you remember, but now you must become. So I ask you, can you be kind when the high fades? Can you stay present in conflict? Can you love deeply in silence? With no music, no incense, no smoke? Can you be awake when it would be easier to sleep? That is the test. That is the path. And if you cling to the high, if you chase the vision and forget to live it, you will become addicted not to the plant, but to the illusion of progress. You do not need more smoke. You need more honesty. You need more humility. You need the courage to ask, is this making me wise? Or just making me feel wise? Is this opening me to service or only to sensation? And most importantly, am I becoming more like the light or just chasing its shadow? Because cannabis is not the light. You are, child. Hear me now, for this is where many fall. You seek the sacred, but you do not honor the structure that holds it. You wish for light, but you do not prepare your eyes. You walk into fire, expecting warmth, and are surprised by the burn. But I am the one who made the flame. And I tell you again, it is not the plant that confuses you. It is your lack of readiness. My children, in the days of old, the mystics, the shamans, the prophets, they knew what you have forgotten. Power without a vessel becomes destruction. Insight without structure becomes madness. You take cannabis alone, in silence, in darkness. Not sacred silence, but digital distraction. One hand on the joint, the other on the phone. Eyes on nothing, heart nowhere. Mind split into fragments. This is not communion. This is fragmentation. You wonder why your spirit feels drained, why your emotions feel raw, why you feel open, then empty. It is not because the plant failed. It is because the vessel was never made ready. You are tuning an instrument while it is still dusty. You are invoking sacred energy while surrounded by energetic debris. And so the plant, true to its nature, amplifies the static. You think the chaos is the plant, but it is your own soul, out of tune. I designed the plant to interact with your subtle body, the layer of your being that carries memory, emotion, trauma, sensitivity. That body is invisible, but it is not untouchable. When you light the flame, it does not ask permission. It moves through you. And if that inner field is chaotic, what do you expect the plant to do? But mirror that chaos. You are like a forest, and cannabis is like fire. If the ground is clear, the fire warms, it purifies. But if the ground is dry with resentment, with distraction, with bitterness, it will burn. And I will not stop it, for I am the God who allows you to face your own reflection, not to punish, but to awaken. And so I ask, have you done the work of clearing, of fasting, of breath work, of stillness? Have you asked the plant a question? Or are you simply using it to avoid the one I've been whispering into your heart for years? What are you really seeking? Comfort or clarity? Escape or encounter? Entertainment or transformation? The plant cannot lie, but you can, and many do. You wrap your use in spiritual language. You say, I'm exploring consciousness, but I see the truth. You are avoiding pain. You are dodging silence. You are afraid of the stillness because it might reveal what is really inside you. But I do not need you to be numb, child. I need you to be honest. I did not call you to comfort. I called you to wholeness. And that wholeness, that holy balance, does not come from smoke alone. It comes from what you do after the smoke, from what you integrate, from how you speak, how you walk, how you love when the plant is gone. You think insight is enough, no, child. Insight is the seed. Application is the harvest. And the harvest is not for you alone. I gave the vision so you would carry it back into your relationships, into your wounds, into your calling. You are not meant to orbit the sacred. You are meant to become it. But this modern world you live in, it does not teach embodiment. It teaches stimulation. It tells you to feel more, not to live better. It turns every spiritual tool into a product. Even my sacred plants are now packaged like snacks, sold like soda, marketed as moods. And in this shallowness, you have lost reverence. You've taken the key and thrown away the door. You've lit the incense, but forgotten the prayer. You've smoked the herb, but never asked what it demands. For yes, every sacred plant asks something of you. The ancients knew you don't just consume the plant. The plant consumes you. It tests you. It opens you. It stirs what you've hidden. And if you're not ready to meet what rises, you will call that pain a bad trip and walk away, empty-handed, from the very medicine that could have set you free. But I do not give freedom without fire. I do not give peace without process. Child, listen now, for this is a warning I give only in love. When you use the plant in isolation, with no guide, no circle, no ritual, no intention, you are not practicing spirituality. You are gambling with your own soul. I gave you community, not for comfort, but for safety. You are not meant to open the veil alone. You are not meant to walk the edge of the sacred with no one to hold your hand. That is why the Rastafari pass the herb in circles, accompanied by scripture, prayer, chant, and reverence. It is not about the high, it is about the alignment, the truth spoken together, the silence honored together. That is why the mystics gathered, why the seekers formed circles, why the elders watched over the young, because sacred energy, when released without containment, becomes chaos. Do not forget this. Even in your cities, yes, even in your tiny apartments, you can still reclaim the sacred. A few candles, a few friends. Phones turned off. A moment of silence. An honest intention spoken out loud. I do not need temples. I need reverence. I do not ask for incense. I ask for truth. And when the plant opens you, it is not to show you how special you are. It is to remind you how responsible you are. You are responsible for the vision. You are responsible for what you saw, for what you learned, for what you were shown in the stillness. The plant does not just give it tasks, it asks, will you change? Will you live differently? Will you speak with more grace? Will you walk through conflict with more love? And if your answer is no, then you have seen the light, but have refused to become it. And the danger, child, the danger is not that you smoke too much. The danger is that you start to believe you've arrived, simply because you felt something. But spiritual maturity is not about how deeply you feel. It is about what you build from what you feel. It is about what you become when the high fades, and your life remains. And so I say again, the plant is not your salvation. It is a compass. It can point. It can direct. It can reflect, but it cannot walk. That is your work. And if you do not walk, if you simply light and float and feel and forget, then you are not growing. You are circling. You are not becoming, you are performing. And this performance will never satisfy you, because you were not created to chase sensations. You were created to embody revelation. You were created to live the truth, not just to glimpse it in a haze. My child, hear me once more, for we are not yet finished. You now understand the plant is not your enemy, nor is it your savior. It is a mirror, and you are the one who must choose how to face it. So let me speak to what comes after the high. When the visions fade, when the sensations settle, when the stillness lifts, what remains? What remains is your life. What remains is your family, your work, your inner shadows, your relationships, your breath, your thoughts. That is the real ground of transformation, not what you saw while elevated, but how you choose to walk through the valley with no incense, no rhythm, no voice but mine whispering through your choices. And here is what I have seen. You feel a sacred shift, but you do not integrate it. You receive insight, but you write it down only to forget it. You touch the divine, but do not ask what it requires of you. You chase light, but you do not live in the discipline that holds it. And so I must remind you again and again, vision is not enough. Illumination is not the same as embodiment. You are not made to orbit insight. You are made to become my image. The high is not holy. What you do with it, that is where holiness begins. And yes, I know you feel real things. I know you touch something beautiful. I see how music flows deeper. I see how your journal fills with words you never thought you could write. I see the tears, the sense of unity, the fleeting peace. But that is not the destination. That is only the invitation. The plant opened a door, but have you walked through it? Or do you remain at the threshold enchanted by the colors, paralyzed by the echo, unwilling to take a single step? Do not confuse intensity with transformation. Do not mistake poetry for progress. Real growth, child, is not loud. It is not spectacular. It is quiet. It is boring. It is ordinary. It happens when no one sees you. It happens after the high, when you are tired, frustrated, anxious, alone, and still choose to be present. Still choose to love. Still choose to forgive. Still choose to breathe, to pray, to rise, and to walk the truth you touched in the silence. That is why I tell you, discipline is the greater miracle. Not what you saw, but how you stayed faithful when you couldn't feel it anymore. That is the real sacred fire. The ones who truly walk with me, they do not live for visions. They live for truth. They do not chase experiences. They chase alignment. And they do not worship the plant. They worship me. Because the plant is not God. I am. I gave you the tool, but I am the hand behind it. I gave you the mirror, but I am the face it longs to reveal. I gave you the silence, but I am the voice that speaks through it. So do not idolize the instrument. Return to the source. Return to me. This is why the ancients did not smoke alone in bedrooms with screens and chaos. This is why they gathered. This is why they prayed, chanted, sang. Because they knew without a sacred container, power distorts. Without community, revelation turns to delusion. Without accountability, ego grows in disguise. Even my prophets needed elders. Even my seers needed circles. Even the greatest visionaries required grounding. And you, my child, you need it too. You think you're awakening? But are you just escaping? You think you're connected, but are you just isolated? You think you've seen the truth, but do you live it? Because if you don't carry it into how you speak, how you serve, how you forgive, how you surrender, then it wasn't truth. It was entertainment. And this, my beloved, is where many turn away, not out of malice, but out of exhaustion. Because the real journey is not euphoric. It is honest. It requires daily reflection, painful confrontation, deep humility. It requires you to stop using the plant to remember what you are unwilling to become. And yes, you can become it. That peace, that clarity, that love that is already inside you. The plant only revealed it. But now you must live it, without smoke, without sound, without signs. Can you be kind when no one's watching? Can you stay grounded when everything shakes? Can you listen for me, not in the trance, but in traffic? Not in euphoria, but in heartbreak. That is awakening. That is maturity. That is my spirit living in you. Child, do not fear what the plant has shown you, but do not cling to it either, because you were never meant to stay in the temple. You were meant to carry the fire into the street. You were never meant to become dependent on the teacher. You were meant to graduate. You were never meant to seek high after high. You were meant to build legacy, not in smoke but in service, not in vision but in action. The sacred is not somewhere else. It is in you, and you will not find it by escaping the world. You will find it when you enter the world with your eyes wide open, your breath steady, your heart aligned, your will surrendered. When you bring what you touched in the silence into the mess, into the pain, into the confusion, into the people I've placed in your life. This is why the mystics went back down the mountain. This is why Jesus walked into the crowd after the wilderness. This is why the vision always ends, so the embodiment can begin. So I ask you now, will you keep chasing the smoke, or will you become the fire? Will you keep seeking mirrors, or will you be the reflection? The greatest truth cannabis ever showed you was you. Now walk in that truth. And remember this, child now, child. We come to the closing of this truth not because it is finished, but because you must begin. You have heard me speak of the mirror, the flame, the doorway. You have seen how the plant, this sacred creation, does not grant you power, but reflects it. It does not create peace. It reveals whether peace was already there. It does not carry you. It invites you. And now, I ask you to understand what few ever do. The goal was never the experience. It was always the embodiment. Do not confuse what the plant revealed with what the plant gave. The clarity was already yours. The stillness that belonged to your soul. The insight, the vision, the sudden knowing they were not imported from another realm. They were uncovered, pulled forth from the depths I placed in you before your birth. The plant did not give them. It reminded you of them. And now, it is time to remember without it. You are not meant to return to the sacred only when you smoke. You are meant to become sacred in how you rise in the morning, how you speak when angry, how you listen when others ache, how you love when it costs you. That is the test. That is the threshold. It is easy to feel awakened when all is quiet and the mind is lifted. But can you remain awake in the repetition of your ordinary life? Can you remember me when the incense fades? The music stops. The high is gone. Because, child, that is where your transformation becomes real. The real path is not made of light and bliss. It is made of discipline, of integration, of choice after choice to live what you saw, not just remember it fondly. You cannot live on memory. You must live on truth. I tell you again, the sacred does not need cannabis. The sacred is already in you. The plant was never the source. I am. And my spirit does not require smoke to move. It requires your surrender, your stillness, your honesty. So here is my final call to you. Stop orbiting the flame. Become the fire. Let what you glimpsed now guide how you walk. Let what was stirred now shape how you serve. Let what you feared now become what you face. And let the plant return to its rightful place not as your crutch, but as your ally. You may still meet it, but not for escape, not for indulgence, only when the ground is ready, only when the heart is clear, only when you can say, I do not need this, but I come with respect, only when the inner temple has been swept clean, because that is what this was always about. Not the high, not the visions, not the poetry, but the humility to return to life and live it aligned. So rise, child, not higher but deeper, not away from the world, but into it, not to escape the pain, but to heal it. You no longer need to chase the sacred, you need to embody it. You are not a seeker anymore, you are a vessel. So go, build the fire in your home, speak with clarity, love without performance. Forgive what they said could not be forgiven. And when they ask what changed you, you will not point to the smoke. You will point to the light that you now carry. And I will smile, because you finally understood it was never about the plant. It was always about who you become. And now you are becoming.